Good morning. Heidi Oropesa with Florida U Judge, and today my colleague, attorney Timothy Sullivan, is joining me because he is going to discuss an article that he recently published on LinkedIn. I'm going to be showing that shortly, but good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So you're here today because there's a couple of races going on currently here in Pinellas and in Hillsborough, but we're from Pinellas. We're voting in Pinellas, so we're kind of following those. Although the ones in Hillsborough, certainly as attorneys and who do business out in that county too, those are important too. But so there's this race. There's a sitting judge, Judge Liz Jack, who she ran and won in 2020,
Right.
and so she's been serving for 5 years. And recently, their Tampa Bay Times, they let me just go ahead and show it. They recently, in this race versus a local attorney, Oxalis Garcia, which, by the way, she's already been on Florida U Judge. This afternoon, attorney Donnie Kilfin is going to be chatting with Judge Jack at 2:30 here on this platform. But Oxalis Garcia has already come on and discussed her candidacy on this platform. I'm going to go ahead and share the article from Tampa Bay Times, which I think it was in the beginning of July that this article came out. I'm scrolling now. You're able to look at it, not me because I'm here on this screen. But so the headline is she's been a Pinellas judge, meaning Judge Elizabeth Jack. There's a picture of her there for 5 years. A lawyer wants to unseat her. And you reacted by publishing an article in reaction to this. So let's get the conversation started.
Sure. So the starting point of this conversation is that when the framers of the Florida Constitution wrote the Constitution, they did not give judges a lifetime appointment. It is every 6 years you're up for election. And, they it could have been like the federal system where once you become a judge, you're a judge for life. So I've got no beef with the idea of someone running against a judge. But I think that as members of this community, we have to acknowledge that it's pretty rare to run against a sitting judge. And when it happens, I think it should be closely examined. So I found out that that Oxalis Garcia was running against Judge Jack. I think it was in maybe March or something like that. The Clearwater Bar Association has a family law seminar every spring. And although I practice zero family law, I do go to this seminar. It's pretty fascinating. There's a case law update that I just like to go to it. And it was at that seminar that I learned that someone was running against Judge Jack. So there's some judges where if they drew an opponent, you wouldn't really be surprised. But this one did surprise me that Judge Jack had an opponent. Now, just to clarify any bias I have, I've known Judge Jack for a long time, like almost 20 years. And certainly I'm supporting Judge Jack, but it did come as a surprise. And Judge Jack is not immune from competition. She's an elected official. And if someone wants to run against her, they can run against her. If you've got $8,000 in a law license and 5 years of experience, you can run for judge. And so this article came out in the Tampa Bay Times.
Before you continue, can I just thank you for, with full disclosure, you're saying you're supporting Judge Jack. I always want this platform, like I said at the start of the broadcast, that Oxalis already has had an opportunity. I'd like this to resemble the neutrality that judges are supposed to
Sure.
model when they have two different parties in front of them. I'm a voter. I'm not going to say who I'm going to be voting for. I don't endorse. I used to. That's created its own problems. So I want this to be looked at as a platform that's neutral. Every voter, you and I, are responsible to not get fed who we should vote for, but should do our own research. But go on.
Yeah.
Thank you for in full disclosure saying that you're biased in her favor.
Yeah, and when you interviewed Oxalis, I mean, she echoed those sentiments that it's important for the voting public to know about these down the ballot races. They're not the most, exciting races, but they really do have tremendous impacts on people's lives. So it's great that this information is made public, and part of why I wrote my article is for the same reason that I have a couple thousand followers on social media that I wanted to know my opinions, and then I've got 5 or 6 thousand email addresses from almost 20 years of practice that I wanted to know about my opinions about it.
Okay, and so and then I'm gonna let you continue on. I'm sorry for jumping in there, and I hope you didn't lose your train of thought. But again,
I didn't.
the unwritten rule of the truth is, and she commented, and with the interview with the Tampa Bay Times, that there is an unwritten rule that attorneys are not supposed to run against sitting judges. Now, I agree with you. Sometimes you look at an incumbent and you're thinking, that's the wrong one to challenge. Although you're right, there's elections every 6 years, and no one's immune. So, but I'm concerned that that unwritten rule will inhibit somebody from running, as you said, some judges that may need to be challenged.
Yeah, well, that's we've seen that over our careers that there's
Hmm.
judges that um, year election after election don't get a challenge, and it could be good, it could be bad. Um, but it is, it's going out on a limb. To that end, I give her credit. It's risky business, for your professional reputation to challenge a sitting judge. So, um, you know, that's all I have to say about that, I guess.
I'll say this without making any endorsements. I haven't. Again, she came on first. Judge Jack is going to come on at 2:30. But I can say this. I Before bringing on Oxalis Garcia, on May 30th, she came on. I didn't really know her. I never interacted with her. Came on because, again, both sides should be afforded the ability to address voters. But I can say that I had the opportunity as a defense attorney, criminal defense attorney, when Judge Jack was a prosecutor. I had experiences in interacting with her, and I never wa certainly, there's been prosecutors that, oh, it's not the best experience, but with her, it was always there was nothing in her as a prosecutor that I walked away thinking, criticizing or feeling not happy about. She was fair, and she has a great temperament. That was always my experience, to give, my two cents. Okay.
Yes. So with Liz, for me, I mean, from the moment that you talk to her, you know that she is a very, very smart person. And I think in general, having really, really smart judges helps the system. And I mean, she is just very prepared. I've seen her speak at two different candidate forums now, and this is no knock on the other five candidates that I've seen, but she is super prepared at these candidate forums. Um, in terms of that, you want me to move on to the article?
Yeah, yeah, because there's a lot there in the article with yeah, one of the things that you mentioned in your article is that she's being interviewed by the Tampa Bay Times, and it went south at some point because at some point she's consenting to the interview. They're getting a written consent because it's now on the record, and she wants to walk it back because she's fearful that she may have violated a judicial canon, which is, for those of you who are not familiar with the legal arena or non-lawyers, canon 7 governs conduct the conduct of judges, and particularly even candidates, even when they're not even judges yet. When they're running, they could do something that puts them in a situation. You in your article said that she said this was her contributed to her decision to run, a bad ruling or a case that the one of the parties weren't happy with Judge Jack's ruling.
Right. So the way that this has transpired is different from any judicial election that I've seen since I've been practicing since '07. That you've got a judicial candidate that's at least on several occasions talking about a case that she had with her opponent. I've never seen it before. I think that it might come close to um, rubbing up against Canon 7 of the judicial qualifications. Um, there's a couple of things, making statements that suggest that you would rule differently than, that you would rule a certain way on a case is a no-no. And then just the general requirement that when you are a candidate or a judge, you're expected to maintain the integrity and the dignity of the judiciary. I question whether those comments might run up against Canon 7. But the hard part about reading this article, of course, it's like a 2-page article, and we don't really know what was said. We only have the benefit of knowing what was published by the Tampa Bay Times. If it were me and I said nothing wrong, I'd say, release the transcript of this interview. I want the public to know that I didn't say anything wrong.
Has that happened?
No, not that I've seen.
So, but I mean, so did they publish whatever it is she didn't want to be published?
I think that they intimated that she said something improper. At
Yeah,
least she thought she said something improper
correct.
anyways.
Correct.
But I think we can read between the lines that commenting on these cases and that sort of thing, that might be what she was concerned about, but we don't really know because we don't have the full transcript of
Right.
what was said. She also, I don't know if you saw that they released their voter guide for the different candidates. Did you see that?
No, so comment on that.
Yeah. So
Tell us about that.
so they go through, they ask the same questions of every judicial candidate. And, what are your top 3 priorities? And she says to actively listen to parties, and then to approaching every matter without personal bias. And, that rubs up against Canon 7, I think. She talks about her judicial philosophy as being pragmatic textualism, which in my eyes is an oxymoron. You're either, a textualist or you're a pragmatist. Those two things don't jive together. And talks about, with a strong focus on legislative intent, which is not textualism. So, I question those comments as well.
Right, because you got to figure what the intent was.
Right.
Right?
Is she saying that? Is she saying that is she using the word textualism just because she knows that that's generally what people want, when that's not actually her judicial philosophy? It's a concern for you and I both as practicing attorneys, because although this seat is currently in family law, this seat could be moved to criminal law tomorrow. You just don't know that. And all of us that are in the legal community, we want judges that will look at the law, apply the law as it's written, so that we don't have to guess what's going to happen in court, right?
Yeah, and even then, they, like you said in your article, did I show the link to your article? Did I already do that, Tim, at the beginning?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I'm going to do it again just so that whoever is in LinkedIn or wants to become registered to have an account on LinkedIn, they can read your full article. Here it is: why judicial elections should be about judgment, not disappointment. So, you know what? I lost. What was the last thing you said? I'm sorry, Tim. You did.
I think we were talking about judicial philosophy.
Yeah, oh,
So
thank you. Okay, so what I was gonna say, even if it's in your article that I didn't invite, it's a good article. You're talking about the appellate process. If you're unhappy, there's
right.
a remedy. You can go above that court to see if there was error, to have a higher court review And because sometimes, yeah, judges can get it wrong.
So I think what triggered me to write this article was after reading the Tampa Bay Times article, there were a few things that stuck out to me as, oh my gosh, like, so in the article, they talk about this one case where um, Judge Jack was the judge. Oxalis represented ex-husband in a divorce and injunction proceeding. And in that proceeding, she filed 3 different motions to disqualify the Judge Jack from the case, all of which were denied. And when I read that, I don't think the general voting public knows how rare that is. In my career, I've filed two different issues, motions to disqualify in the whole career, and she filed 3 in one case in a matter of a year. So and then it was only after that third one was denied that she filed the motion or filed paperwork to run for this seat. So you have to wonder, what is the motivation here?
Yeah, well, so if she'd like to react to your reaction, that she's welcome to, but
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know anything about those cases. I don't.
So
I had
yeah,
her on, yeah, and
so
then
this
later on, this
Roberts,
article came up. Yeah, go.
so the main case that they talk about in the article, and from when you interviewed Miss Garcia, when I've seen her at candidate forums, she talks about having the opportunity to be heard, having all litigants having the opportunity to be heard. And then in this article, I read about this injunction case, and because the theme has been an opportunity to be heard, my what I was guessing was that when you looked at the underbelly of that case, that Judge Jack shut down the parties from putting in evidence, limited their time, something like that. When you read this appellate opinion, this was a 4-day injunction hearing. These
Hmm.
parties had an opportunity to be heard. The When it comes to family law judges, there's no juries. They are the finders of fact. They listen, they judge credibility, they do all the things. And ultimately, the judge believed certain testimony in that case, and it didn't go in Ms. Garcia's client's favor. But I don't think that it can be fair to say that they weren't given an opportunity to be heard when you had a 4-day injunction hearing. That's a patient judge.
That's a lot of days, for sure.
Right.
And
We just had a vehicular homicide jury trial in Pinellas County that didn't go 4 days. I mean, 4
right,
days is a
so
lot.
it is, yeah. And so I wish I'd had more time than what I usually get sometimes with
Right.
certain. Okay, um, so the voters, the public who will be listening to this is listening to it now. You were able to. I haven't even read the opinion. There's a lot going on in that Tampa Bay Times article. It's not just
Right.
one case; it's several. So
Right.
I'm not going to give an opinion or judgment because I would have to go and read each thing to say, wow, there's the suggestion of unfairness or the claims that are being made not being listened to. Is that true or not? Because if it isn't true, that's a problem. I
Yeah,
would be very, yeah.
to be fair to Miss Garcia, that opinion ultimately reversed Judge Jack. But if you look in the footnote of that opinion, so the whole issue was about the admissibility of child hearsay. There's 2 elements to introducing child hearsay, and the question was whether there was corroborating evidence to support the child hearsay. And when a judge is going to admit child hearsay, they have to make findings as to why what was corroborated, why they found it credible. And the opinion that reversed Judge Jack says that there was no order ever submitted. But when I look, of course, this is private. You can't see the actual documents on the Pinellas County website. But when you look, there is an order that was filed. I can't see what it says. And then when the appeal was filed, it says that the appeal was filed without the order that's under appeal. So I have to wonder whether the outcome in the second DCA would have been the same had the lawyer for the appellee, the wife, had added that order to the appellate appendix.
So that's interesting. And
Right.
I'm going to ask you now because I'd like to know what happens when an appellate court reverses, and then something that they could have looked at that would have changed their decision. Like, I'm assuming that the order would have delineated the reasons why the hearsay was admissible or should have been
That's
admissible.
Yeah, that's my assumption as well. And in the opinion, it says that Judge Jack during the proceedings said she was going to create a written order about the reasons for the admissibility of that evidence. And they said that that was not submitted as part of the appellate record. But when you look at the docket, it certainly appears to me that there was an order. It just wasn't included in the appellate record. And of course, the appellate court is married to what is presented to it.
Okay, so my question is now, because I mean now, and good, thank you, Tim. That's very, you have integrity to have commented upon that. At this stage, it appears that candidate Garcia, that case was reversed. Good for her. Congratulations to her for that. But not, I'm disturbed that an order was not included and that the appellate court should have looked at that. That's troubling to me. So,
Well, I mean, that's the whole, that's what was under appeal. How do they even go forward with an appeal without the actual order that's under appeal?
so what happens now after the reversal? Can it be reopened? Could they like re-look at that?
Well, I think with any injunction, it could always be refiled. I don't know. I don't think that it has. But there's no statute of limitations or anything like that on filing for an injunction that I'm aware of.
Okay, but how about the lawyer for the appellant? Did they maybe not notice that, hey, the order, which is very important, is not part of the record of on appeal?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but
Okay,
that was my thought that, if I was the other party and there was this appeal and the argument was that this evidence shouldn't have been admitted, I would have filed a motion to supplement the appendix and add that written order into the record so that the appellate tribunal has the opportunity to review what the heck we're talking about.
yeah, that would have been okay. So look, let's go ahead and I'm gonna ask you about this because there is a lot. And look, even though they're subtle, there are subtle suggestions, I believe, based on what I'm reading and hearing, where I would be very concerned as a candidate to be even involved in any of those suggestions. Because I remember in 2015, in 2016, when I thought, I'm going to civically engage, start a blog. There might be conversations about sitting judges. Okay. And I remember calling the hotline, the Florida Bar hotline, because I didn't want to get in trouble. I worked
Right.
very hard to go to get my license. So I did. I called and they told me 4-8.2, the Florida Bar rule that governs attorneys, and it says, and I know it by heart because I don't want to get in trouble. It says you cannot impugn the qualifications or integrity of a judge with reckless disregard for the truth. So if it's true, you're good to go. But if it's not, you can
Right.
get in trouble as a lawyer. And then under the canon, let's just go ahead and share that. The public should know these things. It's a Florida bar rule. We're governed by that. Truth matters, especially in an era where there's a lot of muddying of facts and truth. Let's share that again, and then I'm going to ask you about it. The Judicial Canon 7, and it's A 3, subsection 3, subsection E, and I'm going to ask you about 2. Knowingly misrepresent the identity, qualifications, present position, or other fact concerning the candidate or opponent. Are they treading on dangerous water, the people that are commenting, be it the candidate or whomever, that this candidate is associated with, where it could be seen that those persons are surrogates?
Yeah. I I
Is
don't
this a
think
problem?
I don't think anything that I've seen, either spoken word or written by Oxalis herself, has gone down that road about Judge Jack's qualifications. I think, there's a lot of social media accounts not a lot, but several social media accounts that are, call it what it is, attacking Judge Jack online. Um, that if they are part of her committee, I think that as the candidate, you have an obligation to say, stop attacking my opponent.
How about number 3? While a proceeding is pending or impending in any court, make any public comment that might reasonably be expected to affect its outcome or impair its fairness, or make any non-public comment that might substantially interfere. What about that? I mean, those cases that were reported on by the Tampa Bay Times, there's suggestions that there's unfairness.
Yeah, for sure. I don't like it, for sure. I don't think that it's appropriate, in my opinion, for a candidate to talk about other cases against their opponent, or where the opponent is presiding over the cases. You've seen a lot of elections over the years. I bet you've never seen a candidate like this make these kinds of. I mean, I've never seen it before, and
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't like it.
concerned. I'm concerned that it might be looked at as possibly going afoul of that rule.
Well, I think you need look no further than the candidate's own comments that she's afraid of that as well.
Right. Okay, so we've been going 27 minutes. Great article. Do you want to do you want to comment on anything else that we've not discussed?
So, again, I kind of led this by saying that I was generally surprised to hear that someone was challenging Judge Jack when I first found out about it. But of course, you and I don't practice, or I certainly don't practice in family law. So you don't really know, what's a person like when they get on the road. So I looked at the Florida Department of State Division of Elections about the supporters, financial supporters of both the candidates. And what you see is overwhelming support from people that appear in family court, lawyers that appear in family court for Judge Jack. Um, you know, many well-known family law attorneys support Judge Jack. And of course, the first one that I noticed is Bill Bennett. And you probably know that I have so much respect for Bill that I've always, yeah,
100%.
I trust his judgment so much. And he was one of the first people to support Judge Jack. And you just don't see that same level of support, at least financially, on the other side. So that, to me, that's telling that this is not, certainly there's not a large number of attorneys that feel that they're being mistreated by Judge Jack, that it
Yeah.
might be isolated. And if it is isolated, is Judge Jack really the problem?
So Bill Bennett, I can say I've known for many years. I consider him a mentor. He's a phenomenal attorney. For
He's brilliant.
phenomenal, he
I
is.
love talking to him.
I
He's
do
just
too. I do too. And he's a good guy. Just not just a good lawyer, but he's a good human being. And
right.
that would have not known had you not gone that far into researching and mentioned that name. So I can say completely that that's a good supporter. That's a good supporter, and I don't think he would support somebody that's not doing a good job on
I
the
don't think
bench.
so either.
Anything else?
I think that's it. I think we've got
Okay.
some interesting elections coming up. We'll see what
Yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah.
And
Did you want to talk about any of those?
the
Mention
other
just
two,
briefly.
yeah, the other two, you've got Liz Constantine versus Stefan Diskey. Kind of an unusual race because you've got two people that are coworkers running against each other. I think
I
that,
didn't know that.
you know, yeah, they're both state attorneys. Stefan is up in Pasco, and Liz is here, of course. I think they're both very qualified. They've done a lot of trials. They've been in court a lot, and um, I think Liz has some more trials and a couple more years experience than Stefan. But I've met them both. Of course, I've known Liz for a long time, but I met Stefan at a couple different forums. Super nice guy. And then you've got Nick and Zachariah. Have you already interviewed them both?
I did bring both of them on, Nick Fiorentino and Zachariah Wade. Donnie Kilfin, our colleague, attorney Donnie Kilfin, who he'll be on this afternoon at 2:30, chatting with Judge Liz Jack about her reelection candidacy. And so I have not, I, he, Donnie interviewed Constantine.
Okay.
So on May 30th, so I haven't reached out, but certainly, hopefully, somebody, if not Stefan himself, if he happens to catch this or somebody that knows him, he's welcome on. And in fact, I'm going to reach out to him to see if he wants to come on.
Right.
You know that I do
And
this
then
as a civic
uh,
offering, so I tried to do my
on
best.
Nick and Zachariah, the only thing that's, they're both qualified, I think. And
I
of course,
think so too.
I have a bias there as well because I used to work with Zachariah. But Kevin Hazlett, who I have a lot of respect for, even though he's one of my competitors, but I have a lot of respect for him. He endorsed Nick, and in his endorsement online, he talked about how Zachariah was a young attorney, which just rubbed me the wrong way. The bottom line is if you want judges with 30 years experience, you've got to elect them in their 30s. And if you look at some of the best judges we've had in Pinellas County, Overton, Cadell,
Oh
Andringa,
yeah.
they were all elected or appointed anyways in their 30s. So I don't think we should look at age as the metric as to who is the best candidate.
And he came on and he said he's been practicing for 10 years.
Something like that. I don't know, but he's
Well, no,
I
that's what
think
he said
he's
to me, and I think he's a smart young guy. And again, I'm not endorsing anyone.
sure.
Florida You Judge, you all. That's why it's called Florida You Judge, because the public decides, not me.
Right.
Okay, but I'm happy to hear you be clear and transparent about, look, that I'm going for this guy. Listen, I'm ultimately going to vote for somebody. I'm not going to say who,
Right.
but
Yeah.
all right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. This is attorney Timothy Sullivan. He practices here in the Tampa Bay area. He does criminal defense, steers away from family law, but does attend seminars because it's an area of law that he's interested in, just intellectually for whatever reason.
Just a big nerd.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me today, this afternoon. Haiti
Thanks, Haiti.
Oropesa, for I hope you come back on another issue, because
Sounds good.
he's very, very smart. Haiti Oropesa for Florida Judge. I'll be back, not me, but I'll be running this equipment behind the scenes. Attorney Donnie Kilfin will be on at 2:30 with Judge Liz Jack.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.